German Chancellor Angela Merkel and US President Donald Trump haven't always seen eye to eye, meaning their first face-to-face discussions could be tense. But the leaders of two of the world's most powerful countries put on a diplomatic smile for the cameras as they met for the first time at the White House.
After months of criticizing Angela Merkel's open-door policy on Syrian refugees, President Trump welcomed the German Chancellor to the White House with open arms.
It is a great honor to welcome you to the People's House, the White House.
President Trump applauded Merkel for her commitment to NATO and job training. A German reporter asked Mr. Trump if his position on trade would isolate the United States from the rest of the world.
Well, first of all, I don't believe in an isolationist policy, but I also believe a policy of trade should be a fair policy. And the United States has been treated very, very unfairly by many countries over the years, and that's going to stop.
The two world leaders maintained their opposing positions on immigration.
Our two countries must continue to work together to protect our people from radical Islamic terrorism and to defeat ISIS. We also recognize that immigration security is national security. We must protect our citizens from those who seek to spread terrorism, extremism, and violence inside our borders. Immigration is a privilege, not a right. And the safety of our citizens must always come first, without question.
Merkel defended her commitment to helping refugees despite the threat posed to her country.
We have to protect our external borders because, and there we have to work on the basis of mutual interest with our neighbors. Migration, immigration, integration has to be worked on. Obviously, traffickers have to be stopped, but this has to be done by looking at the refugees as well, giving them opportunities to shape their own lives where they are, help countries who right now are not in an ability to do so, sometimes because they have civil war. I think that's the right way of going about it.
On their wildly different leadership styles, Merkel responded that when there's a difference of opinion, they would find solutions and compromises which are beneficial to both parties.
Talk about military cooperation was perhaps more optimistic. Trump said he'll work with Germany specifically on 3 international hotspots, saying he appreciated the German commitment in Afghanistan. This is a place, a country where the United States is even considering ramping up their commitment over a decade and a half into that war. He also said he hopes to work with them to achieve peace in Ukraine. Merkel saying that she supports the Minsk agreements as an outline for peace there, and that they can work together to defeat what he described as Islamic extremism and ISIS. Here's what the two leaders had to say about NATO.
I reiterated to Chancellor Merkel my strong support for NATO, as well as the need for our NATO allies to pay their fair share for the cost of defense. Many nations owe vast sums of money from past years, and it is very unfair to the United States. These nations must pay what they owe. During our meeting, I thanked Chancellor Merkel for the German government's commitment to increase defense spending and work toward contributing at least 2% of GDP.
We said during our summit meeting in Wales that also Germany needs to increase its expenditure. We committed to this 2% goal until 2024. Last year we increased our defense spending by 8%, and we're going to work together again and again on this.
It's possible that as a result of Trump's criticism of NATO, that the alliance will actually be strengthened, as it seems for now at least Germany is actually committed to increasing their financial commitment to the military force.
German Interior Minister Thomas de Maizière said on Friday he expects Turkey to stick to a deal with the EU on the flow of migrants. The comment came after Turkey's Foreign Minister Mevlut Cavusoglu threatened to suspend a refugee deal with the EU and warned of opening the way to send 15,000 migrants per day toward Europe. Relations between the EU and Turkey have soured after Germany and the Netherlands prevented Turkish politicians, including Cavusoglu, from campaigning within their borders for Turkey's upcoming April 16th referendum. Demazier said Turkey has been provocative to garner a response from other countries and then claiming to be the victim.
In South Korea today, Secretary of State Rex Tillerson said the U.S. will not rule out the use of force to confront a growing nuclear threat from the north.
The last 2 times North Korea has fired off missiles, this multiple launch earlier this month and a more advanced model in February, U.S. intelligence has been caught by surprise. North Korea's increasing ability to launch without warning is one reason Secretary of State Tillerson overturned 2 decades of U.S. policy toward North Korea.
The policy of strategic patience has ended. We're exploring a new range of diplomatic, security, and economic measures.
Strategic patience is the diplomatic way of saying the U.S. has relied on economic sanctions, covert sabotage, and cyber attacks to make it difficult for North Korea to develop nuclear weapons. But as President Trump put it in a tweet, North Korea is behaving very badly. They have been playing the United States for years. Following a visit to the DMZ dividing the 2 Koreas, Secretary Tillerson said, in effect, no more games, and raised the threat of a preemptive strike against the North.
If they elevate the threat of their weapons program to a level that we believe requires action, that option is on the table.
On Friday, Japan held its first civilian evacuation drill for a missile attack as wariness over the potential military threat of North Korea. Around 100 civilian participants were involved in the exercise, which took place in the northwestern city of Oga. The evacuation drills followed North Korea's launch of 4 ballistic missiles into the sea off Japan's northwest coast earlier this month, with one landing about 124 miles from Oga. Officials claim the exercise was prompted by growing concern about the regional security situation. Chief Cabinet Secretary Yoshihide Suga said, "We believe this is a very important exercise in terms of furthering the understanding among residents about the actions they need to take when the government issues information about a missile launch."
Japan has launched a reconnaissance satellite aboard an H-2A rocket. Local media reports such satellites are normally used to spy on the DPRK's missile launch field. The Radar 5 unit was carried into space from a launch site in Japan's southwest on Friday. It's meant to replace an existing satellite that's coming to the end of its mission. Tokyo currently maintains 3 optical satellites for daytime surveillance and 3 radar satellites for nighttime monitoring. 2 of those are backups. The satellites are officially for information gathering, a euphemism for spying, but are also used to monitor damage in the wake of natural disasters. And now for an update on the Kuril Islands dispute between Russia and Japan. Russia has come out and said the deployment of its troops on the Kuril Islands are within its sovereignty. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Igor Morgulov said if Japan has any questions concerning the deployment, it could bring them up during the 2 countries' foreign and defense ministers' meeting later this month. Earlier, the Russian Defense Ministry announced its plan to deploy a division on the disputed islands in the Western Pacific in 2017. Japan, which also lays claim to the islands, rejected the plan and launched a diplomatic protest. Russia has been expanding its military presence on the Kuril Islands, also known as the Northern Territories, in Japan, with Moscow adding it will continue to step up defense measures on the island.
The U.S. Army has an idea of how to resupply troops on the battlefield. shell them with mortars. Researchers at the U.S. Army Armament Research Development and Engineering Center recognize that in today's era of automatic weapons, it's relatively easy to run out of ammunition. The problem, however, is it can be tough to determine where ammo supplies are, and getting to them can be tough given enemy fire. That's why they came up with the ammunition resupply projectile. Instead of highly explosive material, hollow artillery shells would be filled with ammunition. The mortars would be equipped with GPS and parasails to deliver goods to soldiers pinned down on the battlefield. While it's just an idea for now, the Army was recently granted a patent for the ARP. Perhaps troops will one day be calling in mortar strikes on their own position.
It was the worst Hajj disaster in history. An estimated 2,400 people were crushed to death on the 24th of September 2015, although Saudi Arabia's official tally put the death toll at less than 1,000. By country, Iran lost the largest number of citizens, 464 in total. The crash in Mina added to already mounting tensions between Saudi Arabia and Iran and led to the severing of diplomatic ties between the two regional rivals. Tehran accused Riyadh of failing to ensure security of pilgrims, blaming the disaster on Saudi mismanagement and criminal negligence.
Saudi leaders must accept their responsibility in this terrible accident, this serious accident, and fulfill their obligations.
Barred by their government, Iranians didn't attend last year's Hajj for the first time in nearly 3 decades. Verbal spats between the two sides have continued, with Saudi Arabia repeatedly accusing Iran of fueling conflict by supporting Shiite militants in Syria, Iraq, Yemen and Bahrain. Rejecting those claims, Tehran, for its part, has accused Riyadh of supporting Sunni terror groups like the Islamic State organization and Al-Qaeda. Despite the tensions, the two sides recently discussed arrangements for this year's Hajj, as well as the contentious issue of compensation for the crash victims. The Saudi Hajj Ministry said the kingdom, quote, welcomes all pilgrims from all different nationalities and backgrounds.
According to state news agency IRNA on Friday, Iran has dismissed comments made by U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis while meeting with Saudi Deputy Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman that accused Tehran of destabilizing regional stability. Mattis and Prince Mohammed, who is the kingdom's defense minister, met Thursday to discuss U.S.-Saudi military cooperation in the ongoing fight against Islamic State. IRNA cited Iran's foreign ministry spokesman, Bahram Qasemi, blaming the Saudi prince, saying, "This Saudi official, who is one of the key players in the Saudi war against innocent people in Yemen, Syria, Bahrain, and other countries in the region, has made an irrelevant remark out of desperation."
More than 40 Somali refugees have been killed when the boat they were travelling in was attacked, according to the International Organization for Migration. A local coast guard in the Houthi-controlled area said the refugees were all carrying UN documents and were on their way from Yemen to Sudan when a helicopter fired on their vessel. Some 80 refugees were reportedly rescued. The coast guard said the victims were targeted in the sea as they were heading to the Cause camp in Ras Al Arra in Sudan. They had official documents but were recklessly targeted. There's no respect for humanity. The UN's refugee agency said the asylum seekers were moving out of Yemen because of deteriorating conditions. It wasn't immediately clear who carried out the attack. The Saudi-led coalition, which is fighting the Houthi rebels in Yemen, said it didn't carry out any operations in the area on Thursday.
In Bangladesh, where a man blew himself up at an anti-terrorism elite security forces camp and left 2 others hurt. The incident comes a day after a series of raids were carried out on suspected militant hideouts in the troubled country. The Southeast Asian country has suffered a series of Islamist attacks in recent years. Home Minister Asaduzzaman Khan said the man carrying explosives entered the Rapid Action Battalion camp near Dhaka International Airport Friday morning. The explosives went off after he was challenged by 2 police officers, wounding them both but causing no other casualties.
ETA are reportedly set to announce plans to disarm. France's Le Monde newspaper reports the Basque militant separatist group has scheduled a full handover of weapons for April the 8th, 6 years after declaring a permanent ceasefire. If confirmed, the disarmament would mark one of the last chapters in the demise of ETA, which called a unilateral ceasefire in 2011. The head of the Basque government says the report of an ultimate ceasefire is a credible one. As far as we're able, he says, we've been trying to boost the process. The government in Madrid is taking an uncompromising stance. They are a terrorist organisation, he says. We'll see what they do before we decide. The government's message remains unchanged since 2011. ETA must disarm and dissolve. More than 800 people have died over several decades of armed struggle in a bid to establish an independent Basque state in northern Spain and southern France. The group has tried on several occasions to negotiate a disarmament with the Spanish and French governments, but they've refused to deal with it and urged it to hand over its arsenal.
Now, French prosecutors believe the letter bomb that exploded on Thursday at the International Monetary Fund office might have been sent from Greece. The blast injured one of the employees. A far-left group from Greece is suspected of carrying out the attack. The economic situation in Greece, which may have contributed to the rise in extremism there, dominated the news a few years ago.
Greece is teetering on the brink of bankruptcy right now. Banks are closed, cash hard to come by.
Day by day, the queues grow longer, victims of Greece's economic collapse. They go without shelter and without food.
When at night your brother commits suicide, then you'll remember me, this man yells at police. He means the unemployment that has led to so many suicides in this country.
They were told Greek banks would remain shut indefinitely. There would be restrictions on cash withdrawals. Greece was in the midst of a financial emergency.
Well, today you may think the situation in Greece has improved, given the country no longer appears to make the headlines very often. But the reality is pretty grim, and the crisis is far from over. The unemployment rate is the highest among EU countries and reached 24% in January 2016. The figures for youth unemployment are far worse, though, with more than half jobless. The majority of the unemployed haven't worked for more than a year. Those who led a normal life only recently are now finding themselves sleeping rough on the streets.
The Secret Service is investigating an embarrassing breach of security, just the latest in a string of them over the past few years. CBS News has learned that an agent's laptop computer containing sensitive information is missing. Here's Jeff Pegues.
The laptop was stolen yesterday morning from a Secret Service agent's car parked on this street in Brooklyn. Law enforcement sources say the computer contained information about Trump Tower and information on Hillary Clinton. Also missing, Secret Service agent lapel pins for the Trump and Clinton campaigns, as well as the 2015 papal visit. Police have grainy surveillance video showing someone breaking into the vehicle, but detectives have been unable to develop a profile of the suspect or determine whether the agent was specifically targeted. In a statement, the Secret Service said its laptops contain multiple layers of security, including full disk encryption, and are not permitted to contain classified information.
Wanted attention.
The theft comes less than a week after intruder Jonathan Tran climbed over the White House fence and roamed around undetected for nearly 17 minutes while President Trump was in the executive mansion. The Secret Service says Tran scaled 3 different fences on the White House grounds, one 5 feet, one 8 feet, and one 3.5 feet, while uniformed divisions officers attempted to ascertain the location and identity of the individual. House Oversight Committee Chairman Jason Chaffetz has investigated other White House breaches and says Tran nearly made it inside the mansion.
The idea that somebody could jump the fence of the White House, be on the grounds for upwards of 15 plus minutes, be right up against the building, hide behind a pillar, and then jiggle the door, that can never, ever happen, and yet it happened again.
They're President Donald Trump's first line of defense, sworn to protect him at any cost, jumping into action when someone shouted gun, and protecting him from a man who tried to rush on stage. But now, 2 Secret Service agents are reportedly in trouble for taking selfies of his sleeping grandchild, Donald Trump III. The shocking claim comes courtesy of progressive magazine Mother Jones. They say the 2 agents are now under investigation for abandoning their post of protecting Trump Jr.'s 8-year-old son. It happened when the 2 agents drove from Westchester County and he fell asleep in the car. The source says when the boy awoke, he freaked out and told his mom, Vanessa Trump. The Secret Service has commented saying they are aware of the matter and investigating it, adding the importance to not jump to conclusions.
The Russian government is looking to shut down the Jehovah's Witnesses. The Justice Ministry has applied to shut down the religion's headquarters in that country. They claim it's an extremist organization. The church denied this. They issued a statement on their website saying extremism is deeply alien to the Bible-based beliefs and morals of Jehovah's Witnesses. The statement also said this recent move is part of a pattern of government persecution dating back at least to Stalin. There have been other actions taken against the religion in recent years. Their international website was declared extremist in 2015, as were some pieces of their literature in 2009. The church says it has 175,000 members in Russia. The country's Supreme Court will be considering the Justice Ministry's request.
Pope Francis is receiving massive criticism as of late from a prominent Italian rabbi who is denouncing what he sees as a growing Catholic undercurrent of resentment, intolerance, and annoyance towards Judaism. Rabbi Giuseppe Laris says this intolerance is exacerbated by the Pope's careless repetition of anti-Jewish stereotypes. In an open letter, Rabbi Giuseppe Laris says, "What a shame that the official documents of the Catholic Church regarding the Jewish faith should be contradicted on a daily basis by the homilies of the pontiff."
The IRS has given fast-track approval for after-school Satan clubs. The federal tax agency took only 10 days to grant tax-exempt status for the clubs. Judicial Watch obtained the records. It is unclear why the IRS gave the Satan clubs such special treatment when it stonewalled dozens of conservative groups for years under President Obama. Meanwhile, the Satanic Temple has announced it plans to target any schools that have a, quote, good news club, launching its Satan clubs there to counteract the Christian clubs.
This news from leftist California, specifically the far-left city of Berkeley. They voted unanimously to become the first city in the United States to divest from any company that involves itself in any aspect of building the border wall. Look who's here. Bill Sandbrook is with us. He is U.S. Concrete President and CEO. That's what you do. You make concrete.
We make concrete.
And you want to put your concrete in the wall, don't you?
Well, we're evaluating it. We don't know how much concrete's going to be in the wall yet. It's too early to tell.
Understood. I got it. But what do you make of Berkeley saying, we wouldn't touch your stock with a 10-foot pole? Well, I know you can't comment on the stock, but please comment on Berkeley, will you?
I think it's an interesting development that's indicative of the controversy.
Interesting.
Of the controversy.
Look, I know you're the CEO of a publicly traded company, so you can't exactly pound the table, but you're not pleased, are you?
I'm not pleased that construction is becoming politicized, obviously.
Right.